All right, so before we start talking about the next section, section 2.6, and the quadratic formula, we're just going to solve this equation in one of the methods that we know now. So if I ask you, what are the solutions of the following equation? Let's solve this through factoring. So we can add 4 to both sides, and we get x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. And then we go to factor. So this sign tells me that they're both the same, and this tells me that they're both going to be positive. So I know it's going to be x plus and x plus. And now factors of 4 that add up to 4 are 2 and 2. 2 times 2 gives me 4, and 2 plus 2 gives me 4. So we can say x plus 2 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. All right, now remember, the only way that we can multiply two numbers together and have them equal to 0 is that if one of these numbers is equal to 0. So we can write x plus 2 is equal to 0. And since they're both the same, we don't have to write it a second time because it's the exact same factor. So we can subtract 2 from each side, and we can say x is equal to negative 2. All right, that's the only way, or that's one of the ways that we know how to solve for now. We could solve it through completing the square if we wanted to, but that's one of the methods. So now we're going to go over solving this exact same problem using a quadratic formula. All right. One of the benefits about quadratic formula is that it will give you the answer every single time. Sometimes you'll be given an equation where you cannot factor, so you cannot use that method. Sometimes, if this is not a perfect square, you're not going to be able to use completing the square. So there's some times where those methods are not beneficial. The one thing about the quadratic formula is that it works every time, all the time. All right. The only thing is, in quadratic formula, there's a formula that you have to memorize, and we're going to listen to a song and watch the song on repeat in class to try and help us remember this formula. But when you're using a quadratic formula, you first need to write it in standard form, and you set it equal to 0. And then you're going to identify what is my a equal to, what is my b equal to, and what is my c equal to. Once you identify those numbers, you then plug it into the formula, where we have x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. All right, so now let's go ahead and solve using quadratic formula. So we have x squared plus 4x is equal to negative 4. So same thing as in factoring, we need to set our quadratic equation equal to 0 if we want to use the quadratic formula. So we'll add 4 to both sides just like we did before. So x squared is x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. All right, now we need to identify what is my a, what is my b, and what is my c. So in standard form, our a is the number that's being multiplied to our x squared. Since nothing is there, it's understood to be 1. So our coefficient for a is 1. Our b will give me 4, and our c is also 4. All right, now we just plug this into our equation. So we have x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over top of 2a. All right, when you do this, when you go to plug in, it's very important that you plug in your numbers in parentheses, because when we have negative numbers and you go to plug it in, you might make mistakes when you're squaring or when you have the negative b here. All right, so when you plug in, make sure you plug it in parentheses so you identify. So x is equal to negative, and then our b was 4, so it's negative 4 plus or minus square root of b squared, so 4 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 4. All over top of 2 times a, or 2 times 1. All right, so then we simplify. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root. Well, 4 squared is 16. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Times 4 is negative 16. Divided by 2. All right, I'm going to write this over here now. So then from here, 16 minus 16 is equal to 0. Actually, I'll just move this down. 16 minus 16 is equal to 0. So now we have x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 0 over top of 2. Well, the square root of 0 is 0. So x is equal to negative 4 divided by 2, or x is equal to negative 2. the exact same answer that we got when we factor. All right, so this is one of the methods, another method that you can use, and like I said, the benefit about quadratic formula is that it works all the time, every time. So there's one more example that we're going to do with this. All right, so like I said before, not every number or not every problem that you will go to solve can be used through completing the square or through factoring. So if we try to solve this one through factoring by subtracting 4 and subtracting 4, we have 2x squared minus x minus 4 is equal to 0. If we try to factor this using the x method, our a times our c is negative 8. Our b drops here, negative 1. There are no multiples of 8 that when we combine them or when we subtract them will give me 1, because our only multiples of 8 are 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. And neither one of those has a difference of 1. So we can't factor this. And then if we try to do completing the square, since this number here is not a perfect square, we're not going to be able to use that method either. So like I said before, the quadratic formula is really good to use because it does give you the answer every time, all the time. But when you have a problem like this where you know that it is factorable, it might be quicker and easier for you to use factoring, so it's really up to you. But like I said, some problems, it's the only way that you can solve it. So for this one here, we already have it set equal to 0, so we have to identify our a, our b, and our c. Our a is equal to 2, our b is equal to negative 1, and our c is equal to negative 4. A, b, and c. Alright, and now we just plug it into the formula. Remember our formula, x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over top of 2a. Alright, so now we just plug it in. X is equal to negative b, so it's negative of negative 1, plus or minus square root of b squared, so it's negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a, 4 times 2, times c, which is negative 4. All over top of 2a, which is 2 times 2. Alright? Negative of negative 1, so x is equal to positive 1, plus or minus square root. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Times negative 4 is positive 32. All over top of 4. Alright, now, this here says plus or minus. So we have a plus or minus. So this actually tells us that we have two different equations here. X is equal to 1 plus the square root of 33 divided by 4. Or x is equal to 1 minus the square root of 33 divided by 4. Alright, so this actually gives us two answers because we have a plus and we have a minus. Alright, sometimes you will just be asked to leave your answer like this with radical form because then it does give you the exact answer. But if we wanted to go ahead and estimate this answer or to find a numerical to keep going, we can then take the square root of 33, which is the square root of 33 is approximately equal to 5.7. So we can rewrite it as x is equal to 1 plus 5.7 divided by 4, or x is equal to 1 minus 5.7 divided by 4. And then 1 plus 5.7 will give us 6.7 divided by 4, and 6.7 divided by 4, x is then approximately equal to 1.675, and depending on how you were asked to round that, you might round to the 10th or 100th, or leave as is. For this one, we would have x is equal to negative 4.7 divided by 4, and this one will give us that x is approximately equal to negative 1.175. So same thing, it might just be depending on how you're asked to round that. Alright, so this way we can keep going and we can get an answer even when it's not factorable. There might be times where you're asked to leave it like this, and there might be times where you're asked to actually solve for the numerical value. Alright, that's it for quadratic formula. And then we're going to move on to what's called our discriminant, which actually is part of our quadratic formula, and it tells us about the type of solutions that we are going to have. Alright, that would be our next video.